Hi everyone. So, welcome to the 13th celebrity typing live stream. Sorry for being a bit late. But yeah, just had a slight disruption there, but it's all fine now. Today we're going to start by looking at Steve Englehart. Thank you very much, Isaac. I wonder if this one is going to be another comic book person. We'll have to see. And yes, for anyone watching, please remember that if you want me to type someone, you just have to send a super chat of at least $20, and then I can type the person here on the live stream. I'll do it in order of who has made the donation. Although, if you spend more in your donation, then I'll prioritize you when it comes to then considering who to do next. Okay, right. Let's start. Oh yeah, the tea's on its way. Tea's on its way. We might see my wife. We'll have to see, inshallah. Right, let's start with Steve Englehart, American writer. There we go. American writer of comic books and novels. He's best known for his work at Marvel Comics and DC in the 1970s. It's quite incestuous, isn't it? They all go between the two major producers of comic books. The Marvel or DC, if not his image. So he majored in psychology at Wesleyan University, where he was a member of the Kappa Alpha Society. Okay, he was drafted in the U.S. Army as a journalist at Aberdeen Proving Ground. Interesting. The Vietnam War was in full swing, though, and he realized he felt unable to support it. He was honorably discharged as a conscientious objector that fall. Let me see. Okay. Okay, so Englehart's first work in comics was a 10-page story by writer Denny O'Neil in the series of Vampirella. As Marvel editor Roy Thomas said in a 2007 interview, Englehart became a summer replacement or some such for writer Gary Friedrich. When Gary wanted to go away for a while, he got Steve, who was sort of a young, aspiring artist when he came up to Neil Adams' studio, and he ended up in at Marvel as a proofreader. Then he wanted to write, and I believe he wrote a few pages of a sample script. Gave him The Beast in Amazing Adventures to try out on, and that worked out pretty well. Let's see what else we can say. There's a picture of him in 1982. Um, We'd rampage around New York City. There was one night around a bunch of us, including Jim Starlin. Yes, Jim Starlin went out on the town. We partied all day. Then did some more acid. Then roamed around town until dawn. Saw all sorts of amazing things. Most of which ended up in Master of Kung Fu, which Jim and I were doing at the time. So this guy likes to party. It's okay with some acid. 1998. He was a conscientious objector in the Vietnam War. So refused to take part in that, despite being drafted. So that's interesting. Um, let's see what themes that relates to and how we should interpret that. Hmm. With Stalin, Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. They only worked on the early issues of the series. He reconciled the existence of Captain America and Psychic Buddy in Marvel's 90s precursor Atlas Comics. An anomaly had been ignored since Captain America's 1964 reintroduction to Marvel, presented as having been in suspended animation since 1945. Okay. He had planned to quit comics altogether when he fell out with Marvel. That's interesting, but DC Comics publisher persuaded him to come to DC. That's interesting. So he did not see comics as his life, his thing. He was happy to do something else. It sounds to me when he had a falling out with Marvel, he was willing to leave the entire profession. But he's also persuadable. He was persuaded not to do that. So that's interesting. Hmm. The Englehart and Rogers pairing is described in 2009 as one of the greatest creative teams to work on the Batman character. That's interesting. He recreated Batman as a pulp-oriented dark character. The Joker's persona as a homicidal maniac and introduced love interest Silver St. Cloud. And the story was adapted as the first Batman film in 1989. That's interesting. Among credited development. Hmm. Argue fans' best loved version of Batman in the mid 1970s. Writer Steve Englehart and penciler Rogers' run featured an unambiguously homicidal Joker in noirish, moodily rendered stories that evoke the classic Kane Robinson era. This guy doesn't mind darkness in his writing. The story of a laughing fish. The Joker's brazen enough to disfigure fish with a rictus grin and expects to be granted a federal trademark on them, only to start killing bureaucrats who try to explain that obtaining such a claim on natural resource is legally impossible. Interesting. He returned to Marvel. The imprint Epic Comics published Coyote, a series he earlier created at Eclipse Comics with Rogers. He created that at Eclipse Comics with Rogers. That's very interesting. In collaboration with artist Steve Leialoha. Among those he collaborated with on the title was a young Todd McFarlane, whom Englehart hired on the basis of McFarlane's Coyote art samples. Okay. Married so in 1975. They have 2 sons. Okay, stable family. All right. Let's see an interview of Steve Englehart. Was he the most influential comic book writer of the 1970s? Interesting. Oh, they've animated him. Quite loud, isn't it? Steve Englehart.
Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris. Let me tell you a short story about how I came up with the topic for this week's episode. So, the new Doctor Strange sequel is about to hit.
So is that meant to be animated version of him or Steve Englehart? Probably him.
Do about an influential creator on Doctor Strange aside from Steve Ditko, because honestly, his creator was easily the most influential. And I quickly came to the conclusion, in my opinion, it was writer Steve Englehart. But what I didn't realize until I really started looking carefully at Steve Englehart's history was, yeah, I was familiar with his work, but I wasn't aware of just how influential his work was on a wide swath of characters in the Bronze Age of comics, specifically the 1970s. From 1971 to 1977, Englehart was one of the premier writers.
Right, we have a cup of tea.
And today, what I wanted to do was take a close look at his history and his writing techniques so that we could just understand who Steve Englehart was and what he brought to comics. Because it's not just Doctor Strange. It's the Avengers, Defenders.
It's interesting. This is a guy who is very influential, yet not obviously seen as being very influential. He's certainly not a Stan Lee. So he's not a front and center person. He's more behind the scenes, I'm getting the impression.
1969, and almost immediately began working for Neil Adams as part of the Krusty Bunkers group of art assistants that worked for Neil's studio, and which would include artists like Jim Starlin, Marshall Rogers, Bernie Wrightson, and dozens more.
Right.
Englehart's first credited artwork was with Neil Adams on the March 1971 issue of Vampirella. Englehart was also serving in the Army right out of college, but quickly realized he was a conscientious objector and said in an interview with the Comics Journal that Neil helped testify to Steve's character.
He had to realize this.
Honorable discharge. By the end of 1971,
so he didn't know straight out.
Englehart also began writing and was credited alongside Gardner Fox for a story in Eerie issue 35. Englehart got his foot in the door at Marvel Comics by 1972 as a proofreader. He blogged that he had done some uncredited dialogue scripting on stories with Gary Friedrich, such as Sergeant Fury 94. Englehart had decided he wanted to write more than he wanted to draw, and his first credited work at Marvel was a monster story in issue 15 of Monsters on the Prowl. Englehart would take whatever opportunities editor Roy Thomas had available, and he even worked under the pen name Anne Spencer for romance stories, including one in Our Love Story 18. Englehart was able to transition very quickly from an artist to a writer. So let's talk about his big break at Marvel.
Quite skilled, good, able to switch to new skill sets quite easily.
In May of 1972, Englehart began writing a 6-issue run on Amazing Adventures.
When the Beast was still grey.
X-Men character, the Beast. We can look at a random page and see that there's a lot more dialogue and text than what we're used to today. It is verbose, but that was the style of the time, and it moves stories forward at a faster pace. Issues usually ended with some character introspection, as compared to constant cliffhangers designed for 6 issues to later be collected into a trade paperback. Still, there was a good amount of action mixed with soap opera melodrama. One thing Englehart was noted for was a deep respect for what came before, using sometimes obscure characters and history as plot points. A great example of this is when he
something quite academic about him here.
Patsy Walker, who had been
he goes deep into the lore.
Teen humor comics of the 1950s. Englehart brought her into modern Marvel continuity in Amazing Adventures, and later, when he wrote the Avengers, he had her take on the
getting the impression of a more judicious individual.
To get away with new things. Years before Marvel and DC first did a crossover with
impression at the moment.
Englehart took part
impression either LII, maybe EII. But one of those two is what I'm currently thinking right now.
They visited the Halloween superhero parade that takes place in Rutledge, Virginia. Len Wein continued that background story of the writers being at the parade in DC's Justice League issue 104. And then Conway continued the thread in issue 207 of Thor. All 3 writers were working on the philosophy that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. None of them had run any of this by any Marvel or DC editors, or it probably wouldn't have happened. So Englehart was writing the Beast stories in the spring of 1972, and by the fall of 1972, he was adding the Defenders to his resume. That was a new team book, but it was different in that it was comprised of a bunch of loners that would not traditionally work together in a team setting, unlike, say, the Avengers. The Defenders featured Doctor Strange working with the Hulk and Namor the Submariner. By issue 2, Englehart added Silver Surfer, and in issue 4 he added Valkyrie, who hadn't been explored as much, and that allowed for different team dynamics. Englehart wrote that book for almost a year through issue 11, but by then he was also writing a Doctor Strange comic and the Avengers. In addition to being a comic that featured a lot of internal conflict due to personalities, Englehart wrote a crossover with the Avengers that was popular with the fans, featuring the 2 teams battling in unique combinations. By the way, Defenders is an underrated comic, both the stories by Steve Englehart and by Steve Gerber. It's quirky, it's unique, and I think it holds up because it's full of so many weirdos that you wouldn't normally see working together in any other type of book.
Interesting.
Anyway, by issue 1,
so he's eclectic, he's judicious, he's reflective, he can detach from something but then be quite persuadable back in. He realized he didn't want anything to do with anything military
against the Defenders. But the one thing that dominates the run is Englehart's new character, Mantis. Mantis is a half Vietnamese woman with superior martial arts skills that is slowly introduced into the title with a subplot where she's talking with a mysterious figure in shadow. Eventually, we learn this is Swordsman, a disgraced hero who meets Mantis while she works in a bar. The 2 joined the Avengers, and her backstory slowly gets fleshed out. She was trained by the Priests of Pama, a clan derived from the alien Kree, who were founded to locate and protect the Celestial Madonna, a woman who would marry the plant-based.
Yeah, Isaac's really helped us to build an ecosystem of comic book writers. We can do a whole type map at the end of this.
By the Kotati
Right.
he died
I think I've seen the main things here. We've watched 8 minutes of this. Is there anything else you can skip?
Running around in the American flag, working for the government, was a tough sell. Englehart had a different approach. Instead of working for the government, his Captain America would work to represent the American dream. To that end, Captain America and sidekick Falcon went up against a secret cult aiming to usurp the American government, known as the Secret Empire. It begins with political attack ads against Cap, and the Empire's agents even successfully capture Cap and his allies at one point.
Interesting.
But eventually, Captain America chases the secret leader into the White House, unmasks him, and it's strongly implied to be the president himself, who then kills himself. Nixon was the president at the time.
So anti-authoritarianism, this difference between realpolitik and ideals.
Decking Hitler years before America entered World War II. And following that story, Steve Rogers is so disappointed that he gives up the Captain America mantle. He briefly takes on the identity of Nomad, as he still wants to help people.
That's interesting.
He eventually
he was so disappointed he left Marvel. Potentially. Why did let's look at an interview of Steve Englehart. Let's go to the interview.
My name is Sam Nicoletti. I see murders before they happen. A little voice tells me the killer's name and address. And if I stop them, I save a life. If I ignore them, an innocent human dies.
What was this? Is this
situation?
No, it's not.
Got to create color on, and we are having an all-out blast with this.
The big news is we're also doing a movie.
No, it's an advertisement. Don't want that.
We'll have some more information for you guys soon.
We just are having so much fun with the character. It's probably as good as enough money to get down and get a book signed. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Glasgow a couple of times. I know. Did a couple of shows in Glasgow back then. Would love to go back, but I haven't been there since. No.
Oh, amazing! That must have been one of those conventions John McShane organised. Like he was amazing at getting Americans to come all the way to rainy Glasgow.
Yeah. That's not the name I remember, but it was probably that.
Fantastic. That's great. So no, it's funny because you've always seemed very enigmatic to me. Most people's comic book careers tend to follow a kind of formula. They start in their teens, they're still doing it in their 70s and 80s, and everybody kind of follows that Marvel DC kind of beats. And I remember your resume, just always seemed fascinating to me. Your work was unlike anybody else's, but your life always felt a little bit different from the other guys too.
Off the beaten path.
With your wife, which Americans never do, really. For any length of time,
Interesting.
You seem to be reading the kind of stuff that the regular guys weren't reading and everything. And your career, at one point you're at Atari, whenever Atari's like the hottest thing going and everything. So I could never quite anticipate what was coming next from you, which was always interesting.
Well, I couldn't anticipate it either. When I got started, Dick Giordano was a good friend of mine. Did you know Dick?
He was my absolute hero, and I only got to know him once he got deaf, and he couldn't understand a word that I was saying. My accent was so bad. But one of my great regrets, because he and Neil Adams and that whole scene just seemed like the coolest thing ever.
All right. Well, he was a friend. We both lived in Connecticut, and when I first started writing, I went over to his house to visit, and he was inking while the TV was on. And he said, I love being an inker because the TV's on, and I just sit there and I put the lines down. And this led to a conversation where he said, I'm glad I'm not a writer because every writer I've ever met in comics burns out. And I was just getting started. So I said, I'm not going to do that. And so I kind of had that in the back of my mind that if,
quite easy to persuade.
great thing about comics was that you got to do a new story every week.
This is not a determined type. I think it's very important. He's not a determined type. He must be exacting. The bad part started to overwhelm me. The exacting side. Burnout, introverted sensation.
So I guess comics. I love comics, and I really enjoyed doing comics, but it was never like my be all and end all. My be all and end all was
Room. What would you say though? They're books. Speaker. Quite old fashioned, that speaker.
Months in a Volkswagen van.
Is that Batgirl?
I worked for.
Is that Batgirl's arse?
Books, I wrote notebooks, I did animation, all that stuff as adjuncts to comics. I mean, when I would get to the point where I wanted to write stories again every week, then I would, I would come back. Although that's a little facile too. It was, I was working at Atari, as you say, designing games and having a good time. And this was 82 to 84, so it was like just at the beginning of the computer age, and I was using an Atari computer which had 64K of memory on it, and
this is not a very carefully designed room. It's a bit wonky. That image on the right is wonky.
My boss at Atari called me up and he said they just sold the company and we're all going to get fired on Wednesday. So I called up.
But the other guy, the guy's interviewing, he's thought a lot more about image and what's behind him.
And I mean, again, I would come and go. I just, comics. I don't know. You started this off by saying that I didn't, it was not clear exactly what I was going to do from time to time. I remember Andy Helfer, when the editor at DC, said that's your biggest flaw is that nobody knows what you're going to do every time. And I said, well, I think that's my biggest attribute.
He doesn't make it clear what he wants to do.
I just tried to write good comics when I was writing comics, or tried to design good games when I was designing games, or whatever. And in between, I like to travel.
Yep.
I just,
Extrovert intuition valuing, and he's an exacting type, or a determined type.
Something that other people didn't, that extra dimension. And I was amazed how young you were when you were doing this.
No, I don't think he's an Eiley.
Like a middle-aged guy or something, because
I don't think he's an Eiley. He's not a determined type. He's an exacting type.
College age, really, when you're doing that stuff. But there seems to be an intellect to your stuff, I think. That other people have.
This is not a guy who is stubborn in his intuition. He's quite suggestible in his intuition.
Batman in particular, so on. It felt that there was a dimension that I hadn't seen before in comics, and even as a kid, I was wowed by it. But I guess that's what you brought to your life experience.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, Batman is a specific case because I just loved that character. But I mean, I loved all my characters. I really like writing characters. Getting inside the heads of all these different people, and comics was great for that because there were so many characters, and I had an opportunity to write pretty much everybody. So yeah, I mean, I just took, when I was a fan, I remember I would read particular comics and I go, this is good. I like this, and I just file that away. And so when it was time for me to write stuff, I just, would sort of say, what's the vibe that I think is going to work here? And what can I do with this character? And so on and so forth. I mean, so yeah, I mean, I brought my life experience to it. You were right the first time, but I mean, I'm just sort of talking now for the sake of talking. But yeah, I mean, I just.
Now for the sake of talking.
Comics was not my only area of interest, and what you mentioned, Jack, I am just talking now, but I mean, you mentioned Doctor Strange. When I took over Doctor Strange, I said I need to know about magic. I mean, if I'm writing this guy, I could write him as just a comic book superhero who does things. Well, But if he's the Sorcerer Supreme, he's supposed to know stuff. So I felt it was incumbent upon me to learn some of that stuff. And you know, I can't say that when I wrote Batman, I went out and beat people up in alleys. But,
Interesting.
you know, I mean, I tried to do the characters as,
Yeah.
you know, as best I could. That's all.
So, like Doctor Strange, for example, like where did you dig in? What form did that take in terms of your research?
Well, this was 70s, and 70s there was a lot of magic books, organizations, etc. City had a bookstore called Weiser's, which was famous. It had, you know, it was the occult bookstore. So I just rolled in there after I got that assignment. Well, wasn't an assignment, but in any event,
It sounds to me at the moment it's logical consistency, but I'm not sure yet.
Worth of books, whatever, and I went and read them, and you know, and started to get a feel for what a magical mindset was. I was not the Sorcerer Supreme by any stretch of the imagination, but at least I understood the ambiance of the thing and
right.
some of the, you know, places you could go with it. And so I went there, you know, I mean, I did that stuff.
He thinks of things in generals rather than particulars.
I guess if you were a guy at that time, maybe not reading comics, my brothers were like this, you know, but they maybe read Mike, you know, like Moorcroft, or they would maybe read Robert Anton Wilson or something like this, you know. Then they had a sort of way into comics at an age where they were probably becoming a little bit too old for comic books themselves. You know, there was a lot of cool counterculture stuff starting to seep into Marvel, like that next gen on from, like, Stan, I don't think would have been especially interested in the kind of things the 70s writers were doing. But there was an entire audience emerging for that kind of thing, I guess, wasn't there? And that runs through all of your work, whether it's the more political Captain America, whether it's you know, the spooky Doctor Strange and so on, you know. So you seem to be a guy in the right place at the right time.
Yes, I've said that many times. I was very lucky. Whatever talents I had were perfectly suited for the place I walked into. And another thing that I always point out, when Stan hired Roy and Danny O'Neill to be his assistant editors,
there's no sense of him of driving his own career.
In the only voice, right? And he didn't want the voice to change. But when Roy took over, for whatever reason, Roy just said, "You guys do what you want to do." I mean, there were two.
This person probably needed freedom
to sell. If you can do anything. So I walked into a situation where I had complete creative freedom.
Yep.
Which is not the normal way you start out working in any business. Yeah. And not the normal way that it runs anymore either, you know. But I mean, at the time, I mean, you know, he just said, "You're going to do Captain America," right? I mean, today, somebody doing Captain America would have to go through multi-levels of editorial and Disney and all that kind of stuff, right? But in those days, just like, yeah, go write Captain America. So it was great. And I hope I took full advantage of it.
And did you feel that the age group of the audience was changing, you know, just from, you know, being a writer at the company? Did you have a sense that the kind of guys who were reading Stan and Jack in 1965 were very different from the age group in the demographic that you were appealing to by early mid-70s?
I don't think so. What I had heard when I was a fan in the 60s was that college people are reading Marvel comics, right? And I was a couple of years out of college when I went to work there. I certainly have been reading them. So, but also it was a time, the 70s, I mean, there was a lot of black liberation. There was a lot of women's liberation. There was the Vietnam War that people didn't want to be involved in. So it was a more intellectually fermentable time period. And as a young guy, you know, who was I'm interested in the world, and there was a lot of world to be interested in. So that, I mean, again, that contributed to my getting knowledge from all over the place and paying attention to things didn't necessarily translate directly into comics, but then could be part of the gestalt that I was working with. So I always figured the audience was 20s, in their 20s and 30s. There was certainly a children's audience. We still had the comics code, and so you had to, you had limits on how far you could go on sex and stuff like that. But I never felt like the audience isn't going to get this.
Right.
I always thought the audience will understand this. Another just story of my personal life. I remember when I was a kid, I was talking to some adult and he was talking down to me. And I thought, he thinks kids are dumber than they are.
That's a bit of
so I put
an alpha thing to remember.
Are dumber than you are. So, I mean, I guess I wrote for people who had some sort of, I need to do something about that light on my head. Some sort of intelligence. And I mean, I did turn it in on time and it did sell. So obviously, it was working. The letters came in those days, it was letters through the post office with stamps, and people were happy with what was going on. So it seemed to me that I was doing the right thing.
It's funny that the smart kid reader, is something that people almost forget about, don't they? But I remember when I was a kid, I
mean, he likes his characters. I don't get the sense he's actually that attached to his characters in quite the same way as some other people looked at.
Or Billy Wilder or Alfred Hitchcock are making these pictures. I just knew they were my favorite pictures, So children are more sophisticated than people give them credit for too sometimes, though.
Yeah.
They might not
Sorry?
They might not know the names of the creatives, but they know they like the stories.
Yeah, no, I've heard that a lot. And I had another thought, but I lost it there. But yeah, I'll stop. Go ahead.
He's very quite unassuming.
We're into DC before you get into Marvel, in the sense that Stan and Jack, they kind of blew up when you were maybe early teens or something, where you probably as a little kid, were you reading DCs and things like that?
Yeah, when I was a kid, which was the 50s for me, it was pretty much Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter in the back, whatever. I think it was pretty much all DC that I read as a kid, and eventually outgrew them the way kids do, right? But then when I was reintroduced to Marvel, then I discovered the Marvel way of doing things. The comics in the 50s, I was a big fan of Dick Sprang, for example, the Batman artist, right? It was the art that really interested me here and there, because the stories were just formulaic. It was, it was DC in the 50s. They weren't, they weren't trying to do much story-wise. But there were, there were good artists. When I came back to comics in the 60s, having been reintroduced to Marvel, then I sort of read everybody. I mean, I read Charlton and Gold Key and, everything.
He really goes deep.
I just loved comics. I just, found out that I really, really did like comics, and anything that was a comic, including Patsy and Hetty and stuff like that. I mean, it was, it was interesting to me. And that's again, I have a thing, drives my wife crazy, but if I get interested in something, I don't feel that I know it until I've seen all of it. I can't sort of get 90% of something and then just say, well, I'll just extrapolate what that other 10% is.
This is the
this might be happening in there, and I don't know what they are.
100% LII or EII, and I'm leaning LII.
Stories. I mean, it's like
he's broad, but he's also deep. The depth is more even than the breadth. But he values the breadth, but he just has to go deep.
So yeah,
But I'm leaning LII. It's more about the knowledge rather than about character and people. He does like characters.
Probably getting out of it. Had Marvel become cool when you were at college or something?
Right.
People were starting to read this stuff.
I wanna see. Let's see some quotes first of all, but I want to see why he left Marvel. Jim Starlin was raised to be the perfect martial artist character, steeped in the philosophy of the East, but then Jim Starlin discovered that had been in the service of Jim Starlin, all that had been in the service of Jim Starlin's evil father. So Jim Starlin rebelled against that. That was kind of making Jim Starlin way in the world that Jim Starlin didn't understand issue by issue and seeing it through philosophical eyes. I'm not sure what that means, but anyway, it was just so weird. We were totally into it, and nobody else was, and then everybody else was. It became too much for us to keep up with it. Superheroes are their best express America at its best, with Shang-Chi, and in particular as an immigrant. In the original origin story, he comes as an adult. He really finds identity apart from the family. He finds identity as a superhero here in America. That's not character focus. That's what the characters represent. So again, it's leaning a bit more LII, sort of like a slightly Democrat liberal LII. I'm thinking, but let's see why he left Marvel. Marvel. There we go. Due to a severe falling out of editorial management, particularly when editor Jerry Conway was disputed because of the Civil War, and the thing that his creative freedom was being restricted and his work undermined. Mm-hmm. Yep. So significant issues with editors changing his stories, particularly during his later tenure when he felt Marvel was suppressing innovation and real change in characters, with editorial direction and handling of titles. Thank you, Darren. Yeah, I'll happily type Lou through after this. He clashed with Conway. Oh, that's going to be a very interesting one, actually. Engelhardt alleged that storylines for the Avengers were taken from him by his editor-in-chief, who's known for pushing characters towards real-time development and socially relevant themes, which conflict with a rising editorial preference for maintaining a consistent, unchanging status quo. It's interesting there that, okay, development, you might say it's more Delta, but socially relevant themes also suggest potentially more introverted logic, extroverted ethics. Interesting. Why would why did he make that person quit? I think neither of my first comics. Was a writer of Avengers. Steve created some fun Avengers issues that never hit the high watermark set by Roy Thomas. He also missed deadlines, apparently, with Roy Thomas having to script an issue of a regular comic. It's a giant size issue, a reprint of not so old Beast story, and 2 fill-in issues. Tony Isabella fill-in issues I judged at the time to be the worst Avengers story read up to then. I'm sure. It's not telling me anything of insight, really. So I'm going to come out of that. Mantis creator Steve was not happy. He didn't see much of a connection between the character created and the character on screen. I was not happy with Mantis' portrayal. That had nothing to do with Mantis. I'll say that I like the film quite a bit overall. They're doing good stuff and enjoyed my night at the movie, so long as my brain turned off to the fact that that's not Mantis up there. I really don't know why you would take a character who's so distinct to Mantis and do a completely different character. Pabaku said, can I type John Jurasek? Yep, happily. Thank you. MC doesn't follow comics word to word, and I do support that. At the same time, they should have at least kept some elements of the original character. Right, okay. Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of writers are like that. What else can we go into here? I'm going to go back to his Wikipedia article, see if there's anything else I've missed here. Printed stories began to appear. I continued to do uncredited collaborations and designs at the last minute. Mental, the Ancient One died. Strange become the new Source Supreme. Engelhardt and Brunner audaciously also created a multi-issue story in which the source named Scissornegg Goes back through history, collecting all magical energies, reaches the beginning of the universe, becomes all powerful, and creates something new, leads you to wonder whether this was paradoxically the original creation. That's pretty cool. Chief Stanley, seeing the issue of publication, ordered Engelhardt and Brunner to take a print of retraction. This was not God, but a God, so as to avoid offending religious leaders. The writer and artist concocted a fake letter from fictitious minister praising the story and mailed it to Marvel from Texas. Originally printed letter and dropped the retraction order. That's hilarious. Remember in New York City, a town puddled Dave and did some more acid. So all sorts of amazing things. Most of it ended up with the Master of Kung Fu. I think he's an alpha. In this story, Lovefish is brave enough to trigger fish with Richard's Grim, expected to be granted a federal trademark and then to start killing bureaucrats who claim that obtaining such a claim on natural resources is legally impossible. It's absurdist. It isn't actually that character oriented. It's more it's understanding systems, understanding ideologies, understanding what ideas are sort of people are talking about and thinking about and going deeper on those and trying to turn it on its head. Um, what else? What else can we say? From psychological, mature, and socially relevant tone, superior storytelling, but comes back to their roots, as soon as he advances in their mythos. So takes things back to their roots, and then he understands all the structure of the character. He doesn't strike me as pragmatic. He strikes me as more obstinate than contrarian. The Point Man. What's that? I like Grokkopedia. By the way, Socionics is now on Grokkopedia if anyone wants to see. Let's see. Service in World War One for an initial sense of military duty amid the escalating Vietnam War. The way to draft news enlisted the US Army in the 1960s to select his occupational specialty, trained as a journalist. See, immediately he did not want to do. He wanted to, the family expected him to join the military. He wanted to do something which is very much non-combat. And Sunday Post newspaper worked 5 days a week producing content, gaining practical experience in writing and reporting without deploying to Vietnam. He then developed his opposition to the war based on moral grounds. So he applied the conscientious objector. That's not pragmatic. This is not in line with my principles. And so, despite he had enlisted, but he standard protocol favoring pre-induction applications. He prevailed in his case, earning an honourable discharge of roughly 60 months of service. Not a shift from familial patriotism to personal ethical scrutiny of authority and conflict, themes that later, make sense, especially with Captain America. His writing skills, bridging his psychology degree, child interest in comics after outgrowing them in adolescence. He didn't like the formulaic nature of writing. He wanted greater complexity. Between his father's WO2 heroism and Vietnam era disillusionment further shaped his realist lens on power structures, informing nascent ideas about narrative-driven moral inquiry. Initial aspirations and first breaks. I think it seems less he's understanding the characters in and of themselves, but more about what do the characters represent. This is what I think is the strongest argument towards introverted logic rather than introverted ethics. Exactly, Isaac. You just said what I was saying. Exactly. Um, you could say it's almost a very softened version of Steve Ditko, although Steve Ditko does it from a far more right-wing perspective. This guy's more soft left, but it's a similar sort of approach, but far less absolutist about it. Experimental superhero tropes rediscovered during college to see Spider-Man to craft character-driven plots. His first credited superhero writing assignment followed in 1972. He reimagined the character as more intellectual, countercultural figure amid the era's social shifts. So he introduced the intellectual aspect of Beast. Contrasted with his self-assessed limitations in art, solidified his transition into ongoing assignments at Marvel. He later reflected that this pivot allowed him to emphasize storytelling over visuals, because he's intuitive, far more about concepts than how things necessarily look. Grant Brunner's stories have delved into cosmic mysticism and philosophical confrontations rather than conventional superhero battles. Yep, key thing there. He portrays Strange as a true mystic, emphasizing existential themes, astral projection, encounter with extra-dimensional entities, drawing from esoteric concepts to elevate the character's lore. See, he builds the lore through the character, and it's more, I think, about getting a sense of what the character's about, and from that, how that could potentially add to the lore. It's not truly character-driven in that respect. To emphasize Captain America's role as a symbol of enduring American principles, liberty, justice, opposition to tyranny, while confronting contemporary political failings, institutional racism, government corruption. Again, what does he represent? Batman Revival, which is serialized narratives and godly villains with contemporary social commentary through a new lens. He finds a new lens to see these characters through political machinations and media influence. He co-created with artist Walt Simonson's sophisticated socialite, Silver State Cloud, who deduces identity for observations, mannerisms, and absences. Romance forces him to confront the personal costs of his vigilante life, committing her ultimately to abandon the Batman persona and end their relationship, which he ultimately rejects. Because yeah, the relationship is less important than what he does, who he's about. Humanize him as a flawed adult navigating intimacy amid isolation. Mature romantic foil, distinct from prior damsels, and enhancing his emotional depth without resolving his core conflicts. Departed Marvel following an editorial dispute. Yeah, we talked about this already. Joined a short-lived comic book creators guild, an effort by over 3 dozen writers and artists came down to unionize and negotiate improved contracts, royalties, page rates. He criticized the industry's paternalistic structure, with a parent-child relationship that treated professionals as subordinates rather than equal partners. So this is very alpha-ish stuff. His advocacy extended to later pursuit of retroactive credit. Yep. Again, it's almost like sort of soft Steve Ditko without sort of the hard right-wing edge. Integration of real-world issues and storytelling, personal philosophy and conscientious objection. His views shift after a close friend died from a landmine, leading to conclude this isn't something I should be a part of. To acting on conscience, describing it as cementing a sense of doing the right thing, his personal outlook. He distinguished true patriotism, turning core American values, like this in the Constitution, from unquestioning support for military action, a perspective evident in his advocacy against conscription. Comics portrayed a patriot character as coexisting harmoniously with a CO character, reflecting his belief that principled objection aligns with national ideals rather than contradicting them. Yeah, the introverted logic is very clear here. Criticism of style. As a critic for its verbosity, heavy reliance on narrative captions and thought balloons explain character motivations and plot developments. And data overly expository. Yep. He's not so inclined to just show through the actions. Integration of political and social commentary is drawn occasionally of heavy-handedness, particularly in that stories allegorizing real-world events like Watergate through villains such as the Secret Empire and Captain America. Yeah, a lack of subtlety there. That makes sense. Steve Ditko also lacked that subtlety. All right, I think he's LII. I think we've seen enough to reasonably conclude he's LII. So let's move on now to Louis Theroux. All right, Louis Theroux. I preferred what Grokopedia had to say. So let's try Grokopedia. Let me see if I can just stop using Wikipedia and go to Grokopedia. I prefer Grokopedia. So let's do that. Louis Theroux. What does I have to say about Louis Theroux? Specializing in observational documentaries, examine unconventional subcultures, fringe ideologies, and institutional undercurrents through extended, often uncomfortably direct engagements with subjects. He was born in Singapore. Did modern history at Magdalen College, Oxford. He owned a quirky, wide-eyed persona that became his hallmark before transitioning to the BBC with the series Louis Theroux's Weird Weekends. American oddities like UFO enthusiasts, survivalists, and swingers. His work evolved towards more probing explorations, including the When Louis Met series, profiling British eccentricities, Westboro Baptist Church, social settings like maximum security prisons and psychiatric hospitals. Television has directed feature-length films such as My Scientology Movie, authored memoirs, including Got to Get Through This, and the host of popular podcasts featuring extended interviews with public figures. Raised in the South London suburbs, primarily in the Catford area. Household marked by his father's literary pursuits, frequent absences for writing and travel. A hands-off parenting style, which is loving yet distant. Home environment emphasized intellectual engagement. Its emphasis on observational detail, emphasizing through his later interest in documentary-style inquiry. But his family also made a relaxed dynamic centered around television viewing rather than strict literary dogma. They said that combined with early relocation from Singapore fosters adaptability and relative stability in London, for extensive nomadic uprooting sometimes associated with Paul's personal travels. So modern history and a first-class honours degree. Strong was in analysing historical events and sources, though Theroux described his university years as involving rigorous study without a predefined professional trajectory. That's interesting. Without a predefined professional trajectory. There's aimlessness typical of many high-achieving graduates lacking immediate career clarity, opting against conventional paths. I like this. I think Brokopedia is better than Wikipedia. Against conventional paths, a further legal training, instead drawing personal curiosity, shaped his literary family background. Very useful to see this. I don't actually think this is someone who just is easily influenced down one trajectory or another. This is a guy who's almost decidedly without a clear path and decides to then go down alternative paths. So that is suggesting to me potentially extrovert intuition oriented. But he gets interested in all different people's lives, different sort of outlooks, whether that's sort of swingers, Baptist church. Quite interesting. His history education and likely honed skills in questioning established accounts, fostering an analytical approach, evidence later work, though he pursued opportunities through self-initiated moves rather than elite networks. Yeah, that also makes sense. The idea of elitist belonging to things is not very beta. Not beta at all. For his graduation, he relocated to the United States to pursue journalism. His initial role at Metro of Silicon Valley gained entry-level expertise in reporting local culture and emerging tech scenes. Into television. He joined TV Nation's satirical news magazine series hosted by Michael Moore. He reported on eccentric American subcultures and phenomena, such as survivalists, UFO believers, Ku Klux Klan, holding an on-camera persona marked by wide-eyed curiosity and mild confrontation. It was mild confrontation. What else can we see? BBC special on subculture institutions. It's always subculture, some group of people slightly off the beaten track, which he then dives into and gets to know. And protests at military funerals and church services, engaging with family members who justify picketing with signs decrying homosexuality, with verbal confrontations, including accusations of enabling sin. He doesn't seem to mind being in slightly charged environments. And it strikes you very much that he's not an exacting type. If he is introvert sensation valuing, he's not exacting. He must be determined. This must be an extrovert intuition lead, I'm thinking. Produced his first feature-length documentary, My Scientology Movie. Examines Church Scientology after official access was denied. You'll learn undercover footage, interviews for members, scripted reenactments. Personal life, first married to Susanna Miriam Kleeman, has went to Nancy Strang. He's married for 11 years, and then married someone else since. He disclosed practical challenges of fatherhood amid frequent international travel for documentaries, noting the strains of routine family involvement, emphasizing his commitment to as a present parent when possible. Lifestyle and public disclosures. He maintained routines centered on home-based exercise, cooking, and family-oriented activities while residing in northwest London. In Joe Wick's daily PE workouts, committing to 5 or 6 days a week, even after his family members tapered off. Some sessions involving sweating in tight underwear on the carpet. Pre-cooked vegetarian dishes such as lasagna and pizzas alleviate tension, often listening to the radio and music in the process. This sounds like someone who values introverted sensation, but sort of something which he's working on to help himself. He expressed lifelong anxiety, tracing it to childhood fears such as worrying about failing to dance around a maypole at age 6, tending to anticipate future events negatively. A diary of family during the pandemic, reflecting on personal struggles over indulgence in bourbon, which his wife confirmed as excessive. Previously admitted to letting a regular running habit lapse in recent years, though exercise remains a counterbalance to the emotional demands of his work. His music, with poems for rap classics, old soul, R&B, and folk. He disclosed his appearance in alopecia, sharing Instagram updates on scalp bald patches, eyebrow loss. Affects upper middle class stability with no major personal scandals reported across decades of visibility. Interview style. Scoring interview technique relies on a faux naive style, delivering questions with deadpan humor and apparent wide-eyed curiosity to prompt subjects into revealing unfiltered thoughts that confrontational probing might suppress. I mean, he's not actually that confrontational, but he can be confrontational if he needs to. This method favors prolonged immersion alongside interviewees, sharing routines and spaces over adversarial exchanges, fostering an environment where participants lower defenses without perceiving hostility. On screen embodies an awkward Englishman archetype marked by hesitant mannerisms, self-deprecating aside, and a penchant for ill-fitting attire, fighting outsider appeal in unfamiliar settings. This is someone who understands persona, how to create it and work with it to level with other people. Values of anything. Potentially alpha at this point, I'm not sure. Initial forays into documentary filmmaking, exemplified by the Weird Weekends series, employed a gonzo-inspired style marked by whimsical irony, awkward immersion, and provocative interactions with fringe communities such as UFO-infused survivors. This approach involving direct challenges of subjects' beliefs, positioned him as an outsider probing societal oddities with a mix of curiosity and detachment. It seems to me that there isn't a very clear setting out for him of what he believes in. There isn't an obvious ideology with him. It's more him meeting with quite ideological people sometimes, and him questioning and not necessarily taking issue with the ideology so much as asking questions around it to understand whatever the flaws might be in it. Meanwhile, being very good at leveling with people and building actually quite a good relationship, despite the fact we might not just agree with their point of view, but really trying to understand that point of view and portray that in his documentaries. His methodology has shifted over time towards a more empathetic and introspective tone, prioritizing sustained engagement with subjects facing profound personal medical challenges. He attributes evolution to accumulated experience rather than inherent aptitude. In 2019, that he had lost some of his incompetence, but occasionally missed the naive edge of his earlier work. Described his maturation as a natural progression with age, where his questioning became less confrontational and more attuned to subjects' vulnerabilities. So I think this is also where the confrontational aspect, but he's not particularly confrontational. There is an expectation in journalism to be confrontational. And I think he's been able to grow into himself by dropping further the confrontational and really diving into the difficulties and vulnerabilities that people are showing. That suggests to me more delta values than necessarily even alpha values, and certainly not beta or gamma. He's critiqued his own handling of cues to interview Savile, admitting in 2015 that he missed a potential opportunity to elicit admissions of sexual misconduct by not pressing harder on evasive responses about rumours. He later speculated that more insistent follow-up might have disrupted his pattern of abuse, even if only temporarily. So the thing, he doesn't feel that he can confront, but he's not necessarily naturally good at that in difficult situations. Doesn't necessarily value doing it, but can see the value in terms of revealing something about someone that's important to reveal. Early reliance on surface level whimsy sometimes obscured deeper insights. Realization honed through repeated exposure to complex human behaviors over decades. So it's someone who does assess how he's doing, how he can do. He's open about how he can develop and get better, which is another thing here. Controversies. So you have a Stoke Mandeville Hospital. Grokopedia is really good. Allowing someone to evade scrutiny despite observer eccentricities and evasive responses to allegations. He disclosed that 2 victims of content post-broadcast, one alleging assault on a 15-year-old. Goodness. Dr. Secker described him as a good liar or journalistic deference to access fact prioritized report over adversarial probing, potentially contributing to delayed accountability. Approach reflected genuine naivety amid several charisma and denials. Earlier ethical questions arose in his reporting on sensitive subjects like sex work, where consent and subject welfare became points of contention. Wisdom wants me to type Jeffrey Epstein. Please feel free to make a super chat of $20 or more, and I will take a look at Jeffrey Epstein. More than happy to do that. Immersive with white supremacists, the Aryan nations, employing insinuated wider curiosity. Some right-leaning critics later viewed as a soft peddling by humanizing, rather than dismantling their causal claims about racial hierarchies. For frequently he soft pedals, he tries to build a connection, tries to understand point of view. Sometimes he then goes and takes issue with things and critiques them, but it sounds like he's not overtly ideological, but more fascinated by ideological people and tries to sort of understand where they're coming from. I'm thinking IE reading this. Participatory style involving extended immersion and subtle probing through seemingly naive persona, a shaped documentary genre by normalizing first-person access to insular fringe communities, shifting emphasis from omniscient narration to interpersonal dynamics as a means of revelation. I think his strength in ethics, I think, is clear. Such part of voyeuristic access over rigorous analysis. He's not about the rigorous analysis. I don't think he's a logical type. I think he's an ethical type. I think he's actually a nutrition valuing from the sound of his Delta. I think IE makes the most sense. Let's see an interview of Louis Theroux.
What makes me good at my job is also what makes me bad at life. This is maybe more than you bargained for.
Okay. That's interesting.
It's a cathedral of fraud.
That's a little offensive. You're a very fascinating person. How do you connect with people?
I'm just so curious about what takes someone to that place. Why
That's it. Yep. Yep.
The question I get asked most often is, how do you not get angry with some of these people, especially the ones who are sort of spewing hate? if people see like your attempt to wrestle intimacies from them, that's never going to go well. I think also there's some part of me thinks maybe the other person's got it figured out and I haven't.
Your former wife, so there's nothing real about you. Jimmy Savile, he also said something about insincerity being your speciality.
It's good. I'm glad you brought that up. I remember it vividly. First of all,
I neglected my personal life to focus on achieving professional success. The price was paid by those nearest and dearest to me. When did you get that feedback?
It's all my relationship system, a life support system for my kind of work self, instead of the other way around, saying to my wife, well, this is what I do. I did a lot of great things just by being available at a moment's notice.
So the introvert sensation is not strong for him. It's the weak point. He lacks groundedness. And he's pursuing a sense of, I need to achieve these things. I need to do these things and be capable. It's almost, it's slightly LIE-ish, which I expect IEs to be a bit LIE-ish without actually being LIE.
My goal is 50%. So if you've ever liked any of the videos we've posted, if you like this channel, can you do me a quick favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps this channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel that you've seen, the bigger the guest.
So, first of all, give a brief answer.
I like in your life. So please enlighten me. What are the most pertinent things that I need to know about your earliest years to understand you?
Oh my goodness. I spent 2 hours answering that question on its own. I don't know how interesting it would be. I'll try and give you a brief answer.
I like the long answers.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, my parents are, well, my mum's British, my dad's American. They are both, in different respects, sort of free thinkers. So they grew up in the 60s and they embrace aspects of the counterculture. They regarded their own parents as being, in certain respects, sort of limited and cloistered. And so my mum joined VSO volunteer service overseas to get experience of life in Africa. My dad joined the Peace Corps. He would have been probably enlisted to serve in Vietnam, and he didn't want to do that. So he went to teach in Africa as well, and that's where they met. So I was raised, I was born in Singapore where they were teaching. My brother was born in Uganda where they were teaching at that time, my older brother. But then they settled in London, and so growing up, I was conscious of them as people who really encouraged us to open our minds. And maybe, you know, it was sort of 99% positive, by 1%, I think, like a lot of people, you know, people use this term social justice warriors, right? That's a form of judgment about overly do-gooding. Like there's an element of, I don't tend to use that term because it's been weaponized, but I suppose in a sense my parents were kind of social justice warriors. Like they were very much encouraging me to challenge, or us to challenge, racism where we saw it, to challenge sexism, to be open to new experiences, not to fall into easy judgments about other cultures and other countries and other people. And I only say the 1%. Sometimes that can be inflected with a little bit of a sense of superiority, and I talk a bit about that in my book. Like feeling that we weren't really quite like other people. You know, other people were maybe not quite as smart or not quite as literary.
You focus on that, this idea.
I strive not to endorse.
Yes, doesn't like that superiority.
That I try to unpack and eradicate, but nevertheless, that's the way. Looking back on it, that's something that I see and pick up on. My dad's a writer, a novelist. My mum is after teaching, my dad became a very successful literary novelist and travel writer. My mum
doesn't want to be superior, wants to understand.
BBC World Service, which is, for those who don't know, that's the service that broadcasts all over the world, and it's a bit like
a beta gamma wouldn't talk about that or focus on that thing, certainly not in criticism of their parents around it.
In some ways, the best of the BBC, but so I was growing up sort of aware that we were a family that loved books and loved reading, and we watched TV and listened to pop music and did the normal things, but I think underneath it all was a feeling that to really count in life, you should be a literary writer. And that was without me fully maybe acknowledging it, that was underneath this thing that you should really, I think still my dad probably feels that, like he's very supportive of me and my TV making, but he's like, Lou, have you thought about writing another book? Lou, if you've got time, you've got the talent, you could. I don't want to push you into this, but Lou, you should think about writing a book. That's a great idea for a book, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, so that all of that was underlying my attitude to life. Then they sent me off to school, primary school.
Quite a matter-of-fact delivery.
This is maybe more than you bargained for.
Without quite being dry.
That is the influence of friends, and you know, I could start. So the countervailing impulses of growing up in the 70s and 80s in South London and being exposed to funny, creative people, and my friendship group, which who you know met. Some of them have gone on to work in sort of civilian quote unquote lives as, you know, restaurateurs or you know, music, other stuff. But saliently were Adam Buxton, Joe Cornish, and another friend, Zach Sandler, who were super creative. Adam and Joe went on to have their own TV show, and I was conscious of falling in with a little group, Amelia, of like-minded kids who were very funny, really into movies, TV, and that was where I suppose I began to feel that there was, well, you know, I don't want to
didn't want to fall in or belong wholly to it.
Sort of read back what I do now into that. But I just know that friendship group was very important to me, and maybe counteracted some of the more, because I was academic. I did really well at school. I feel I could just go on and on. Should I go? Should I keep going? I just listen. The other part of it was
self-deprecating.
It was I was quite an anxious child, so I worried about everything, and I would think about things that were on the horizon. Like when I was 5 or 6 years old, I remember fixating. You know, there were various things that came and went that really worried me, but one was the idea of maypole dancing, which was a big. I don't know if it's still like in state primaries at that time. Every May holiday, like you would do maypole dancing.
A lot of IEs I know are quite anxious people.
It's an old English or maybe British tradition where there's a big pole. I think it's like a fertility rite. You know,
so they take their competence quite seriously.
You know, there's a almost kind of mast, a pole, like maybe like a totem pole, almost like so 20 feet high, and then there's ribbons around it. And as children, you would skip around it and you would sort of braid the ribbons together to form nice patterns. And I remember seeing them doing it in primary school and thinking like, that looks really hard, and I'm going to have to do that next year, and I don't know how I'm going to do it. I remember being preoccupied with how am I going to learn how to do that. I only mentioned that as an example. Like there were other things like just reading. You know, before I could read, I remember
weak logic and stubborn logic.
How you do that, and just getting very worried.
Defensiveness over his competence.
Well, I'm someone who is I know everyone worries, but I just feel as though that feeling of worry and anxiety was quite a strong background note. And sometimes I would control my anxiety, not consciously, but again looking back, by working hard, like by sort of becoming almost like super focused on academic work.
And, need to prove to myself my competence. Need to prove my competence. Work hard to prove my competence.
You know, like those people who look back and say, like, well, I was a fuck up in school. I was the opposite. Like I didn't always. No, I would get in trouble. Like, and sometimes I was regarded as, especially when I was younger, 12, 13, as a disruptive element, because I was also quite cheeky and sometimes trying to communicate and connect with people via teasing, right? Which is, I don't know, it's quite a British thing in a way. There's certainly a big thing in my family was what's now called bants, right? And sometimes I'd try and do bants with my teacher and then it wouldn't go well. And so, but in general, which is confusing, like being regarded as some black sheep in class or a disruptive.
So the demonstrative extroverted ethics is there, but what was valued is the extroverted logic.
To mess about and get in trouble, and then you do the homework and you're fine, but you're a bad influence on the other kids. I used to get told that you're a bad influence on your. I was like, that's not true at all. Like, if anything, my friends were just as naughty and were leading me astray. But nevertheless, because I could sort of go home and then become sort of organized and focus on my work, I got for a brief period, I got labeled as the troublemaker. Anyway, going through school, I sort of the lodestars for my sort of sense of who I was and how I would progress in life, such as it is. I mean, I was never that tactical, but as I went through school, I thought, well, I'm pretty good academically. I guess I'll just do well in exams and stuff and then see what happens. And meanwhile, with my friends, we'd be seeing movies. I got into rap music in the late 80s, and so we're dressed like a sort of hip hop nerd. I was smoking quite a lot of weed, but still studying. This was all again.
Yes, there isn't structure as answer. It flows. There's some narrative direction.
I went on to Oxford, and then having done well at Oxford, left university, and at that point it was like, well, what happens now? That was when it felt like, okay, now I've no longer really got a clear path. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, I think if you're academic, if you find academic work not easy, but you find that you do well at it, it's not easy, but you apply yourself and you do well at it, then sometimes life can be a weird bump in the road, like real life. It's something like, well, where are the exams? Because I know I could do those. You know, what do I do now? So for a while, I thought maybe I would be like a professor or an academic or something. But then something in me told me that wasn't quite right. So then the rest of life is another story. But I hope that sort of answers your questions about those different sort of sources of
influences.
Of how I sort of, you know, my whatever it's personality and interests.
One of the things that really stood out to me in that answer was your early relationship with
That's
work.
not a polished answer. It's a exploratory, unstructured answer.
Anxiety of life. Is that accurate?
Well, what it is well, I worried about things in general, and you know, one of those worries was homework or doing well in school. Another worry was
competence,
getting on with my peer group. But insofar as I could control those sources of anxiety, like, you know, work is actually relatively straightforward. Like, it turns out, how do I get more, you know, how do I attempt to relate to people better? Well, that's kind of hard. It's like mysterious, but how do I do well at these assignments I'm given?
Interesting.
Then you just sit down and do them until you get it right. And you know, a lot of these things are subconscious. Like, I'm not thinking like, oh, how can I control my anxiety?
This is interesting.
But I would just find that if exams were coming up, I'd get super anxious, and I don't mean to pathologize it. Like, I've never been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. I've just slightly worry prone, and as it happens, I've become.
It's harder to then build connections with others.
Things going on, you know, in my family.
How
life,
so?
Who knows? You know, my parents' marriage wasn't always happy. They subsequently divorced. There are other things that probably were going on that were stressful, but for whatever reason, I found that, almost without meaning to, I took my studies very seriously. I have to sort of slightly check myself when I say this, because I'm also aware that I've looked back at some of my reports, having kind of got quite attached to this narrative of myself as sort of super swat, right? Super studious.
He's now disrupting his own narrative. He does not like me. He's got a narrative.
Especially when I'm 6 or 7, sort of say, you know, Louis is a pleasure to have in class, but sometimes it would be nice if he would let other pupils speak. He enjoys the sound of his own voice, which is very apropos for this podcast, probably. You know, and like so I had a sort of rambunctious side.
Yes.
And almost in social settings, my mum tells a story essentially in my book, but of how when I was about 5 or 6, I would come home and I'd be really sad. I'd be like, I don't know. I don't like school anymore. And she'd sort of think, well, Louis is obviously not getting on well at school. I need to talk to his teacher. And she went into to class and talked to the teachers and said, you understand, Louis is very sensitive. He's a very sensitive young man. As I said, I would have been maybe 5 or 6, 7 years old. And the teachers were like, really? He's very sensitive. Like, you just be mindful that, you know, things you can say might hurt his feelings, something like that. And they were like struggling to recognize her description of me. Yeah. And then on the way out of class, she passed the class. We could see through one of the glass windows in the door. And I was running along the desktops or doing a dance on the desk.
So the extroverted ethics is there.
In the setting itself, I was a wild child.
Yep.
And just running amok. but also I had like this doubling, like and then I go home and be worrying about small, which I think is probably still true of me in some ways.
But it sounds to me like it's competence that he actually worries about, not how he comes across to others. Or he'd said something to contradict that, but you expect them to say contradictory things if they're an IE. They'll say things that don't actually cohere, and they'll sort of move on without really thinking about it.
Survive in a social setting, or is that the true nature of you?
Right.
Who I am, and I think
Right.
I could say, oh well, I was a younger child and my parents found me funny, and I wanted to perform, and I wanted my dad to, you know, I wanted to get the approval of my parents by being silly. But the fact is who knows? Like, I just know that, you know, things like your sense of humor or your inclination to be cheeky.
Who knows?
That's just always been in me.
Mm.
You know, I'm slightly wary of attempting to sort of unpick where that comes from, because I just know that's always been in me.
The relationship with work, I think even for myself, I learned my relationship with work at a very young age.
Yeah, this is matching IE.
Healthy relationship with work.
The extroverted ethics is very powerful, makes it quite emotional, but it's blended with this sense of, there is a sense of personal attitude formation, which is quite fluid and flexible. Meanwhile, the extrovert logic is the area where he's worrying about, because that's what he values on and tries to work on doing and can develop that competence, but he takes it very seriously.
I think it was all of the above. Like, my dad's got, both my parents have work
all the above
that border on.
He's accepted all those things.
Being over the top. My dad would, you know, he's a as I said, he's a writer.
When someone says all of the above, what they're doing is they're allowing all these different things onto the table. Even if they might not necessarily cohere, and he's not setting out a narrative for what it essentially is. He doesn't want to set out an essentially. It's all of the above. It's extrovert intuition without actually much in terms of introverted logic.
The weekends, like, he didn't really take weekends off. Like, certainly Saturdays he would often be writing, and Sunday mornings he was often writing, and he's an extraordinary. I wanted to give both my parents a shout out. See, my parents were basically first generation university educated, came from very much not at the high table of life, and so for my dad to sort of become a wealthy literary writer is kind of an amazing thing that he did. You know, in the world of, it's one thing to be a popular novelist, that's hard anyway.
It's typical of IE to be quite sort of energetic, slightly cheeky, slightly mischievous in public. When they come home, they are sort of very anxious and sensitive and see themselves as more introverted, which that fits a lot with IEs. Ellen DeGeneres is exactly the same in that respect.
It's an amazing thing, and I wonder if I've ever told him that. I hope I have. Anyway, he'll listen to this probably, because he follows my career with interest. So some of that I would have taken on board just through osmosis of seeing that. Likewise,
taking that on board through osmosis.
Just going to Oxford. She grew up in Tooting, you know, and her.
It's all the influence. You can chart all the influence, all the different parts. It could be this, it could be that. This may have interested me, influenced me. That may have influenced me. It's not packaging the essential. It's bringing all the little threads into the picture.
You know, in the 60s as a woman, that was extremely unusual. So that was in the air. But in the end, my older brother, who was very studious, and the other thing just to reflect on is that I saw my brother as the more brilliant child. Like, he was, the way I saw it at the time, was more effortlessly brilliant, like, or sort of child prodigy material, you know. And I thought I was just kind of sort of irrelevant bit of afterbirth that trailed around after him. And so when I noticed,
does not take his competence for granted at all.
When I was sort of 11, 12, it didn't feel particularly impressive. Like, it felt like, well, I guess I could do well if I work hard. It's not like I'm kind of brilliant like my older brother. But I think when I, you know, again, in hindsight, I think mainly what I see is a sense that I just felt like this was something I had to do. It wasn't a choice. And I, even later on when I was at university, I sometimes used to worry that I wonder if I'm missing out. You know, people say,
One for
It's the
missing
best years
out.
of your life, and
I'm
you should
missing
be
out on.
You should be just going wild, having fun. And I did some of that, but I was also conscious of maybe I'm missing out by studying too hard.
That's what I read into your story of university, was that I actually wrote
That's the
my
extra
notes,
nutrition.
worked his ass off at Oxford. On the point of affection, this is also something
Good question,
I
Isaac.
probably didn't learn from my parents, if I'm honest. I still call my parents by their first names.
Did they encourage you to do that?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I didn't learn affection. And actually, even growing up at 10 years old, when one of my friends turned to me and went, "You're my best friend," my body, like, ooh, because the idea that I was someone's best friend made me cringe. And I had this, I think I had this like emotional intimacy, affection issue growing up.
Although, I think being a best friend is something you show but don't say.
Yeah,
It's a bit creepy. You're my best friend.
Yeah.
I remember feeling stressed.
Well, that's the subtlety of it being an ethical type.
Like say, "Oh, you're my best friend," and then it feels a bit inauthentic.
Yeah.
Yes, you're like, do it, don't say it.
That's a strong ethics coming through.
It's not necessary to say.
Steady on.
But what did you learn about affection at a young age?
I feel really lucky that my parents. I feel as though they were, they worked hard. Like, I had a working mum. My dad was, as I say, had a huge drive to be successful. But I always felt like the love that they had for me was just taken as read. Like, I never questioned it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a way that felt positive. And even though, I think there's a tendency or a temptation nowadays to look back and
Takes the ethical for granted.
Could have been otherwise, and I think parts of that therapy culture are really valid, but there's also a sense in which you can focus on negative stuff, and I'm not sure.
It's someone who worries about everything,
at a certain point,
but doesn't worry about his
how
parents' love.
helpful it is, and so
that's
for
important.
Me, I never kind of questioned like the love that they had for me, and
the ethic.
It was
demonstrative
I felt
extroverted ethics and creative introverted ethics must make sense.
Seeking their approval. Like, I remember friends at school saying, "Well, my parents say if I do well in common entrance, they're going to get me a watch." And I remember thinking, that's quite weird, Or my parents I never felt like they needed to be.
It's all about his own need for competence. It's not a social thing.
For them. And if they took an interest, that was kind of a bonus, but I didn't rush to show them, like, I got all A's, or, I came first in all the exams or whatever. I wouldn't really talk to them about it. Like, that was just something that I did for me.
What about emotional expression?
Yep.
I think that's something that we learn, how to say, like, I love you, and to hug, and to touch, and because you said bants.
Like, humor is really important. I think it's actually kind of what they're so good as creators.
Oh, that's a good interviewer.
My kids' voices in my head, but humor is a very important way of communicating. Humor is really. I often think, in terms of how I see life.
He always says humor is communicating. He says he reflects where the subtleties of something being said is slightly off. He's very aware of if something sounds a bit off.
It obviously can't really be expressed, but we shared a sense of humor as a family, and so we would make each other laugh, and so teasing was important. Like, little, just not taking yourself too seriously. My parents, I would
jump a bit to what was your dark? Let's go to this bit.
It reminds me of something Tim Grover said, which I've repeated a few times. He says he used to train Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And I spoke to him on this podcast when we did the LA run, and he said that sometimes an event that happens in our life or something that happens can create our brilliance. It can be responsible in the case of that kind of independence your parents create someone that works and that goes and gets stuff and that's able to travel and be an island. But it also can create our dark side. Like, the same event creates our brilliance, but also our dark side. So my question to you is, from that particular experience of having that independence and feeling a bit like you were a side thing in their lives, what was then the dark side? I can see the upside.
What's the upside?
For me, it felt like the upside you were
That's
saying.
another thing. He felt that he was a bit of a side thing. He felt that he was not the brilliant one. Yet he did not question the love of his parents. Yet he worries about things a lot. That emphasizes so clearly the extroverted logic being the mobilizing function, extroverted ethics being the demonstrated function.
The independence.
Yeah, I
and
think
the
that's
work.
right. Yeah, being the space to grow and become your own person, and not feel that you're especially kicking against anything, but licensed to follow your own interests. I think that's all positive.
Very
I
Delta.
think what is the look, I think in general, well, I've said this and probably someone else said it as well, that what you think maybe your disability is also your superpower.
Exactly.
And I think I think that I think I've struggled with intimacy sometimes. And I think in terms of relationship building in my private life, like it's a running joke between me and my wife, like that she's extremely sort of emotionally acute, and that I'm kind of slightly the opposite, which is kind of weird when you think about my job, which hinges on supposedly being sort of maybe emotionally or psychologically perceptive, but it's almost as though. But I see it in my mum as well. Like my mum, having worked at the BBC, went into therapy and became a relationship counselor. And it's funny because my mum also finds it difficult sometimes to fully inhabit her emotions. That does sound an odd thing to say. And I don't know, I'm going to probably regret saying that, but let's make it about me. And I think with me, I think, I don't always find intimacy easy. Like it's so I sort of I experience, like, a lot of the times my work is a license to be intimate without consequences, like to get to a bit like what you're doing now. Like you talk to people, someone in a prison, who's been sentenced to 10 life sentences. He's like, okay, how does that feel? So what's life like? And then kind of getting it, or whatever happens to me. All the work I've done, in some sense, is about attempting to peel layers back and see inside someone's psyche.
Yes.
And then get on a plane and fly off and go home and live my normal life, almost at a less intimate plane of existence. And so clearly, and the other joke I've made over the years is like, what makes me good at my job is also what makes me bad at life. So for me,
is it intimacy?
I think if you ask my friends, they might say, be like, oh yeah, Louis is a good guy. I hope they would say that. But they'd also might say, like, he's a little bit absent. Like he's a little bit.
He's absent, right?
I don't feel I'm an especially attentive or present.
That's the word. It's not intimacy. He's good at the intimacy, but he doesn't have his presentness. He's out there, he's doing this, he's doing this, he's doing this, and so he struggles to be present and grounded for certain people who he needs to be present and grounded for. That's it. It's not the introverted ethics. The introverted ethics strikes me as quite flexible. He's an opposite type. He's not a contrarian type. He's quite flexible. He can easily build connections with people and use that in the service of his extrovert intuition and his hidden agenda of extroverted logic. But what gets missing really is the presentness and the ground and then the being there for his closest relationships. And he knows those are his close relationships, he's just not necessarily there all the time. He's out and about doing these different things. It's the introverted sensation that's weak here.
Like, they really, they're there and they think about, they make arrangements, and I don't make really. I'm not very good at social arrangements. All these sort of boring things that are the qualities that are really the stuff of life, like
introverted sensation,
reaching out. Are you okay? It's been a while since I saw you. I wanted to let's meet up. Which in general, this is a crass generalization, but I think women are slightly better at than men. And I think that's been one of the many gifts my wife has given me, is actually involving me in life, like in just a normal, sort of neurotypical
being
way.
involved in life.
It would be to sort of disappear into my slightly incel-like shell, of kind of in a metaphorical shed of kind of counting. The joke in making my book is like, separating my collection of screws and nails into their different jars. You know what I mean? Like that for me is like that. A lot of guys.
What does he mean by that?
Like heaven to have 2 hours to organize my shed, and not realize that you're missing out on the tapestry of life. So I plead guilty to whatever that is.
This is clear confirmation of introvert sensation being a suggestive function.
It's funny, I was having this conversation yesterday with my friends where they're all saying, yeah, Steve doesn't like to socialize.
He explains things oddly, which don't quite make sense. Like, I don't think he is going to a shed and he's out and about doing things, but he gets unclear a lot of the time.
It's just outside.
Which I think is the introverted logic blind spot.
And so, again, my girlfriend, my partner, is the opposite.
Yeah.
So she's dragging me in. So I really
think it's quite a common dynamic. Not bragging, 2 nights ago.
So what's this? Because there's an advertisement or something. Let's go over here.
Directly, but I suppose that was in my mind. Was like, I want to write and be creative, but I know I'll never write books.
Hi, third century man. Please feel free to make a super chat. You want to type anyone?
It came as easily as it should. It's hard when your dad.
Isaac, exactly. He's not passing out the things he's explaining and making sense of them. It's just sort of everything.
Jacob Dylan, that track, One Headlight. Do you remember that one? No. For people who know, it's a great track. It was a huge international hit. But his dad's Bob Dylan. That's a painful, maybe not painful, but that's an extreme.
I want to show some of his work as well. Most memorable moment. Let's try that. Let's see what happens if we go there. Top 10 badass through moments, most memorable moments. Let's try that. Terrifying, funniest interviews. Maybe awkward encounters. Let's try that. Very interesting.
New York, New York. It's a cathedral of porn.
It just ends up doing it. See, you have to be you can't be an exacting type and do this sort of thing because you get put under all sorts of pressures and all sorts of you have to go with that. So extrovert sensation role makes a lot more sense. Theology instead. That's not what it's about. It's about catalyzing the collapse of ideology around him. All right. I think IE is what he is. I think that is almost certainly his type. I can't think of anything else for him. Thank you very much, third century man. Greatly appreciate that. Right, let's move on now. And thank you for that, Darwin. Let's move on now to Pale Valkyrie's suggestion of John Jurasek. Who is that? I'm going to stick with Grokkopedia. I like Grokkopedia. I'm going to use that now instead of Wikipedia. I just think it gets more in depth. I mean, I think probably drew a lot from that interview, but it's useful. John Jurasek. There's not currently an article on him. That's one of the problems of Wikipedia. It's still growing. It covers a lot of stuff, but things are missing. Let's see if there's Wikipedia on him though. No, he's not on here either. So I can't say that it's because Wikipedia is not a good. Oh no, report of the week. Ah, so that's his name. Okay, now we go to the report. Fair enough. No, I apologize to Elon Musk and Wikipedia for criticizing it. No, it does have it. It's called the report of the week. It's an American YouTube channel created by John Jurasek, renowned for its earnest and professional reviews of fast food, frozen meals, energy drinks, and other budget-friendly comestibles. Presented by the host, affectionately known as Review Bra, in a suit and tie while seated in his car. From New York State, graduate of St. Thomas Aquinas College, instigating traction, reviews of energy drinks will expand to fast food chains like McDonald's and Taco Bell, selling accessibility for everyday consumers. Content stands up for his witty yet clean humor, precise evaluations of taste, value, and presentation. Memorable phrases like "My disappointment is immeasurable" and "My day is ruined," which become internet memes. Okay. He's 13 years old at the time. Normal video, energy crisis, energy drink review. It's uploaded in February 2011, featuring a methodical tasting and analysis of the pomegranate flavored 5-hour energy shot from the Energy Crisis series as the core of early output. Right, I definitely want to see this. The suit and tie formal dress code from his channel's early videos, by a personal commitment to professionalism that contrasted sharply with casual environments of fast food reviews. Scott is everyday attire for him, emphasizing their role in elevating the seriousness of his critiques, regardless of the setting. Visual choice, featuring often oversized or vintage-style garments, became a defining element of his persona, so apart from typical YouTube creators in the food review space. Review bra nickname emerged from online fans on bodybuilding forums. Directly, why do people call him Review Bra, explaining its origins light-hearted and more memorable than its channel name, while expressing ambivalence towards its ridiculous connotations. Skip the duration for persona, using a deadpan, earnest delivery that treated everyday products with journalistic gravitas, so adequate and commendable, enters his lexicon as hallmarks of objective evaluation, drawn from old-time radio news with influence, with sincerity, with subtle, dry humor. I think there's a lot of extroverted ethics in this, without taking himself too seriously, but also kind of taking himself too seriously, almost ironically, I'm guessing. The reviews on the week adhere to a structured form that prioritizes objective analysis over entertainment, typically spanning 5 to 10 minutes to deliver concise evaluations. Introduction, detailing product sourcing, accessible American staples and fast food like burgers, tacos. I need to see some of this. Merchandise, personal life, public image, media and broadcasting. Shade is led to proceed to content creation and radio. It's like history or politics in versus Central Florida. To privacy, sharing a few details about his personal life, family, modest home. Avoided close-up face shots, focusing on product reviews, controversies. I can't do as much to myself, marking rare moment of visual frustration over 13 years of consistent content production since the channel's inception. Disappointing Arby's chicken sandwich experience. Highlight a series of signs of burnout, emotional exhaustion, a sense of diminishing returns from solo endeavors. Addressing controversies onto recent online critiques regarding business practices like product presentation videos. A specific incident involving the mishandling of a Taco Bell Baja Blast pie, and naivety and compromising its visual integrity, taking full responsibility without excusing the error, and to commit to genuine revelations, something that the pie's quality remained positive despite the mishap. It's quite earnest as well. I want to take a look at this review bra. Very interesting. Interesting mix of things going on there. My day is ruined. Should we do the energy crisis? So there he is to start off with in the suit. Brilliant. 14 years ago. Is that the first one?
Hello everyone, this is Energy Crisis. Right now we're going to be doing a study regarding energy drinks. We're going to be trying all the main brands, even some smaller
a jacket and a waistcoat.
And we'll be rating them on 3 categories: price, durability, and taste. Today we're doing 5-hour energy in pomegranate form. Previously, I have done 5-hour energy in orange flavor, which didn't taste the best. Did last for 2.5 hours, but
my initial impression is this is a guy who values extroverted ethics, but is not strong in extroverted ethics.
Then the main ingredients are taurine, glucoric acid, and caffeine. Now the packaging is small. It's got energetic colors, and the serving size is relatively small. Could fill this glass twice. So let me try it. I have not tried this one before, so let's see. First thing I'm noticing now, it's like a purple color, even though the orange one was pink. Doesn't smell as bad as the orange one. It's good. Looks pretty good. It almost has like that, like the color is almost sinking to the bottom. Wow. watery like thing is at the top. Still watery like. Doesn't smell that bad. Let's taste. Let's take a taste. You know, to be honest, it's not bad. I have to say, no bad aftertaste. I'm just gonna have to.
I mean, it's sort of absurd. He's drinking an energy drink. It's not Bordeaux. It's the least sophisticated drink, and he's dressing the most sophisticated way. It's hilarious.
The aftertaste. You know, I have to acknowledge that people's taste buds are different, you know, but I'm just saying, for me, it tasted like you know what in the back of my throat. This almost tastes like grape juice almost. So better than that, actually. I guess pomegranate like flavor. Not bad at all. I'm gonna have to pour this back in and have another sip. Sorry. Not bad at all, I'd have to admit. So right now.
Okay, let's go to this. This is what he's about. Okay.
Today's review is for the Burger King Bacon and Cheese Whopper. It's an iconic sandwich, and I've always wanted to try out the bacon variant. I am the reporter of the week. I do food reviews on YouTube. This is Running on Empty Food Review. Yeah, I get a lot of fan art. I never would personally think of this stuff in terms of YouTube popularity. It's like going into a field during a thunderstorm and waiting to get stuck.
This guy has no strength and extroverted ethics.
Good. So the first review I ever did was for 5 Hour Energy and pomegranate flavor.
And I'll be rating them on 3 categories: price, durability, and taste.
You know, it wasn't the greatest thing ever to try, but, you know, it made for a memorable first review at least. At this point in time, I've made about 600 videos. From Taco Bell, I reviewed the cheesy core burrito.
Actually, a little bit of Sheldon from Big Bang Theory.
I also reviewed the triple double crunch wrap from McDonald's. I even went back and reviewed the Big Mac because I wasn't sure how many people have actually tried that. Who knows? I did a comparison side-by-side review of Great Value purified drinking water versus Great Value spring water. It is clear in color, odorless, with no carbonation. People might
he really takes the details seriously here.
Well, the suits and maybe the demeanor.
But
I always have to say,
this is an exacting type.
Steak dinner every night. No, fast food though. Well, there's usually a McDonald's every half mile. It's extremely popular. And I thought to myself, I want to be applicable to the largest number of people. This is someone who
values extroverted ethics, understands it intellectually, and engages with it as a matter of analysis.
I mean, people act like, you know, we're arch enemies, you know, we're in some bitter war or something together. Really, he does his thing.
1, 2, 3, go.
Oh, God.
I do mine.
The suit's great. I figured I'd wear my black suit today with my extra
Black tie.
We stay confined to our region. You know, he's West Coast, I'm East Coast. We're able to manage, at least we're able to coexist for now, and I hope it stays that way. Because the suits that I wear in an older style, they're not really fashionable today. And that's a great thing, because I like these older styles, and as a result, you can get them a lot cheaper than if
potentially, Isaac, potentially.
I always see people saying, you know, I want to dress nice, I want to wear this, but I'm scared to. I don't want to. Well, I thought, you know, perhaps I have the same apprehension, perhaps I have the same fear, but I'm just going to go out and do it, and if it makes me happy, it makes me happy, and that's just what I'm going to do.
All right.
Hello, everyone.
We'll see.
This is Energy Crisis. Right now, we're
Back
going
to my first video. See this.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone watching. I am your host, the Reporter of the Week, and welcome to this this fantastic, incredible video.
Reminds me also of Jacob Rees-Mogg, but like an American version.
That figurative or even the literal sense, because we're taking a trip back in time. I mean, we're breaking open the books. We're literally going back in a time machine here. Because,
I can see why it's a meme.
And now I'll be honest. Very recently, just a few days ago, I think it was on the 20th of February, we just passed the 8-year anniversary of my YouTube channel. I've been at it for 8 years. That's just, to me, that's like, it's mind blowing. You know, I never expected.
And that's what, I don't think this guy is an SLI. I don't think this guy's an SLI. Have a look at this.
Well,
you don't wear this if you're an SLI and want to dress smart or professional. This is not just professional. This guy's wearing. This guy it looks like he's from the 19th century. This is not purely practical professional. This is a guy going for a very considered, refined look. Yeah. This guy values extroverted ethics. He's not strong extroverted ethics.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone watching. I am your host, the Report of the Week, and welcome to this this fantastic, incredible video. One for the ages, but I mean, you could interpret that in the figurative or even the literal sense, because we're taking a trip back in time. I mean, we're breaking open the books. We're literally going.
I love how he speaks in an exaggerated way, in a deadpan way. Like no expression, emotional intonation, but he's also speaking in an exaggerated tone. That strikes me very much as extroverted ethics suggestive.
I never expected to be doing this for that long, and it all just just ended up. I think great. But I remember I started this channel off in early 2011, kind of as a hobby, just something fun to do, something to do. And of course, over those 8 years, I've uploaded so many videos.
If anyone wants me to type anyone else, please make a super chat of at least $20 mentioning the person we want to type, and I will type them on this live stream.
Make sure it's acceptable, and then I upload it, put it up, and usually that's the last time I ever see it. So I decided, it was actually suggested to me by a lot of people. They said, why don't you go and celebrate the occasion and rewatch your very first video on YouTube? And I thought to myself, all right.
This is a very pedantic explanation of what he's about to do.
I've seen it a couple times, but I can't even remember the last time I've ever watched the thing the entire way through. So I guess, we all know what we want to see. Without further ado, I started this channel out reviewing energy drinks.
2.95 million subscribers, amazing.
February 20th, 2011, my very first upload on this channel, Energy Crisis energy drink review, where I happened to try out the very glorious 5-hour energy.
He's a lot more fluid now than he was when he first started.
Let's see what's in store for us. Let's do this. Hello everyone, this is Energy Crisis. Right now we're going to be doing a study.
His mannerisms are so much like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. It's incredible.
Today we're doing 5-hour energy in pomegranate form.
In pomegranate form, that's what it was. And it's just mind blowing, Like, I mean, I look at myself there. I mean, I can't believe it. I can't believe like half of this stuff I could even still recite. It's insane. There I am, though. You can see I'm repping that haircut. That is one for the ages. That haircut is on point. Then of course, it was a big, it was a journey. First, I had that haircut. Then I kind of went through hell and went over to LA Looks hair gel.
Now, one thing I should say, I'm not sure that the character of Sheldon is high fidelity to an LII. He's got like an LII LSI hybrid in some ways, and over time has become a lot more clearly an LSI figure rather than LII. But the actor playing him is I think it has to be an LII, and it's all these sorts of mannerisms.
I made a glorious transition to the grill cream, and that's where that is. You might be wondering, you might be seeing this, and you might be thinking to yourself, wow, he's still got the suits, yeah? I actually still have that exact same tie. Also, that's just crazy. I don't know if the suit fits me anymore. It probably does. I could probably theoretically take the suit jacket, maybe wrap it around me as a blanket, or maybe make a tent out of it, live in it for a while. Did that once or twice before, but probably if I still have it, I don't know if I do anymore. And yeah, I mean, you might be saying like, how old is he in this video? I was around 13 or 14. Some people were saying he's got to be 6 years old, and then other people were saying he was 40 in this video. I was around 13 or 14.
It's 8 years on.
This is, you could say, this is fetus bra.
Fetus bra. Fetus bra.
Previously, I have done 5-hour energy in orange flavor, which
See, slightly awkward humor, but actually quite funny.
It's a relatively small bottle, pretty small.
Back then I had a camera
is 1.5 ounces, and the main ingredients are taurine, glucoric acid, and
well, you're losing it.
caffeine.
There you go. Good catch.
Now, packaging is small. It's got energetic.
You can see, kind of, it's a little shaky doing this.
Let's see if there's something really modern from him. What's this up to date? A McDonald's disaster. I had in years. Oh, let's try this one.
Hello, everyone. This is on empty food review. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone watching, welcome one and all to this newest edition of the Running on Empty Food Review series. I'm your host, the Report of the Week. Thank you for checking in. A little bit of a gloomy sort of setting, which I wasn't even expecting. Some clouds actually happened to roll in just as I was getting everything set up, but I'm certainly fine with that. Can't really complain there. As a matter of fact, this is one of those reviews, I must say, where I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling motivated, and I don't know, I'm just in an overall good mood today. I figure, hey, this is going to be what it is, but...
Talking about his good mood.
If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. I got some requests for this one.
Definitely extroverted ethics valuing. With implications of introverted sensation in there as well. But
tons of reviews.
he's definitely exacting type. The precision is so important to him.
Sees all of that, but there haven't been tons of reviews of the Sonic. And this one, though, I did get some comments and emails from folks that were saying, hey, this item is genuinely good, and it's at a genuinely good price. And one thing that I've been more keen to promote these days is good food at an affordable price. Because, I mean, I see it, you of course see it too, the prices these days are out of control. So if there's an actual fast food meal deal that isn't going to break the bank, and that
there's a financial element to him as well. It's not just about the enjoyment.
All over. So that's what brought me to this new promotion from Sonic.
But it's very much about accessibility of price, which I think ties more into alpha values.
Which already that kind of piques my interest. I think a whole meal for $6. Okay. So what's the catch, right? This is the Sonic.
Like he wants to appeal to the regular Joe, but also dresses in a way which means he can't quite relate to the regular Joe, but at the same time they still love him because he's sort of adorable.
We should go with tots, to be honest. Went with fries this time around, and a medium soft drink. And this time around, I went with a Coca-Cola, and I got some vanilla flavoring in it to kind of make a little vanilla Coke for the fun of it. And I did take a sip. It actually does taste like vanilla Coke, so here's that. So what I'm going to be doing, especially though, is trying out this new All-American Smasher burger. Because obviously the question is, this is a new item, so it's a new addition to promote this meal. I obviously want to see if it's good or not, since this is the cornerstone of the meal. This is the sustenance.
There's lots of sort of
what is the
very formalized language. An item. It's a new item.
2 smashed Angus beef patties, American cheese.
It is very much an analysis. of the different components and make it up.
It's like a smash burger, essentially, but it's supposed to have a couple different ingredients.
Precise formulation.
Sort of burger, but this has some tweaks with the ingredients. It's supposed to be even better, and it's all American smasher right here in the blue box with words to live by: live free and eat Sonic. Now remember those words. You're not sitting here eating Sonic 3 times a day every day. You're not free. You're a slave. You're a slave to the system, right? Because you're not sitting there eating the Sonic all the time, perpetually. If you're not eating Sonic right now, you're not free, says the boss. So deal with it, okay? Live with it. That's life. That's reality. You're not free. You're sitting here watching this, and you're not eating Sonic. So now you have to live with yourself knowing this. Yeah, truth hurts, my friend. Truth hurts.
Maxi USA is witty. Oh.
I couldn't help myself. Had to do it. All right. It's a messy looking burger.
It is a messy looking burger.
Well, only one way to find out if it's good or bad.
I think that's right, Pel Valkyrie. It's his way of immersing himself in something.
So let's do it.
But without the extroverted ethics. It's very precise and technical. Very functional in how he even immersed himself in the appreciation of the thing. It shows the extrovert ethics, the part which is weakest within the alpha values here. It's very TI-SI going on here.
I was checking the weather, and not going to impact me, but I heard that there might be a big snowstorm. Maybe an ice storm. I really don't know. Change, obviously, for a lot of folks in the mid-Atlantic, maybe even the deep south. So I hope if anyone's going to be impacted by that severe weather, hope you take it seriously and everything's all right.
I think he likes this. He's eating it taking quite a few bites. He's just enjoying the burger.
This is a burger that I have one grievance about. One grievance only.
A grievance.
Because otherwise, and the grievance itself is just something to take into account, doesn't really ruin it for me. Because I like it. My one grievance is that it is extremely, extremely messy. I'll let this speak for itself, where you can see everything that dripped off of it. That's mostly just, see it sliding, it's a liquid. That's the mayo and ketchup. Big puddle of it right there. So, the reason I mention that, of course, is this is not a burger I would recommend under any circumstance to eat in the car or to eat in the go. If you're out there on lunch break and you think, oh, it's just a burger, I can just have that. And
no haste in eating, you're right, no haste.
Nice for work.
He takes his time.
I would not take the chances of that one single bit. This is a type of burger that, you know, if you have the ability to sit down somewhere, put it on a counter, lean over it, and eat it that way, I would strongly, strongly advise. Or if you actually have like one of those little trays you can set up in the car, definitely employ that.
He's immersing himself in the burger. He takes his time to immerse himself in the burger.
they go heavy on the toppings, don't get me wrong, and it's very flavorful, tastes good, but as a result, the sauces especially just slide off of it quite easily, and it's also a pretty juicy burger, so it kind of just all blends together. It can slide off easily, and it can make for quite the messy eating experience. But as far as the burger itself is concerned, way better than what I would have expected from a place like Sonic these days. This burger is actually one of the better ones that I've had, where the beef on the outside, if it is like a smash burger, has, of course, that little bit of a crisp to it. But then when you bite in, you make your way in a little bit. Definitely has then more juiciness. It's tender. It's flavorful. A little bit of seasoning on the beef as well, which is really good. I mean, it just tastes good. It's one of those burgers that you just think, wow, I can. Especially, mind you, this is fast food we're talking about here. This is one of those burgers that, for me, because when I get a burger, I usually get them from, just sit down restaurants these days, quality's obviously better, so I just choose that. And a good burger is one of those where you can just go in and you just take the next bite and then the next bite. It's like, wow, this is actually really good. And you could just devour the whole thing pretty much. And this is actually one of those burgers, which is rarer and rarer, especially as far as fast food is concerned nowadays.
He's got such an almost a transatlantic accent
so
there.
many other places, it says gross, or it just doesn't taste good, or whereas this, on the other hand,
The tragic life of why is it tragic? Why is he tragic?
If you've been on the internet for longer than a few weeks, then you are probably well familiar with Review
I'd
Bra,
never come across
also
him
known
before.
as
Never.
Report of the Week and also known allegedly as John. Review Bra is the undisputed king of internet food reviews. He is easily the most recognizable and respected food reviewer on YouTube and probably the entire internet. In addition to being a food reviewer, he is also a radio broadcaster and runs a second channel on YouTube for his VORW radio show.
this is the voice of the Report of the Week.
He has millions of subscribers and hundreds of millions of views. He has been featured on major media platforms like CNN and Forbes magazine. He has also been on popular TV shows like Tosh.0. He is the subject of internet memes and even has a Reddit sub dedicated to his craft.
Hello everyone, this is
John started out back in 2011 as just a kid on YouTube reviewing energy drinks. He then went on to doing fast food product reviews.
Consistency is a big thing for
He
him.
has amassed millions of loyal fans who rely on him to throw on a classic suit and give his stamp of approval or stamp of immeasurable disappointment to the latest fast food craze.
My disappointment is immeasurable. And my day is cool.
Rod is one of those people who have found his true calling in life. He is a genuine one-of-a-kind YouTube personality who has pretty much become a legend in his own time. But despite experiencing such explosive success at a young age and becoming a legendary internet icon, Review Bra's life, as documented on his YouTube channel, hasn't always been so easy. According to internet folklore, John experienced a scary situation back in 2016 involving a possible stalker or group of stalkers who began posting about his personal life on 4chan and claiming to know creepy personal details like the route that he walked at night. The alleged 4chan stalker leaked a series of personal photos attributed to Review Bra and even claimed that they had stolen these photos from his own home. However, it's noted that the leaked photos were all digital in nature and likely obtained by someone snooping through his family's public Facebook accounts and not from an actual robbery. John had commented in a past video posted on July 28, 2016, about being, quote, gang stalked. during a Taco Bell food review, which began nasty rumors that he had been suffering from some kind of mental health issues, like schizophrenia, and was being delusional about the situation. Others commented about how they thought it was a publicity stunt for his YouTube channel. Some of Review Braw's YouTube viewers later noticed what appeared to be a mattress placed in the back seat of his car during a new Taco Bell food review video posted on August 12, 2016. This led to rumors that Review Bra was sleeping in his car and possibly hiding out during this period to remain safe. Review Braw's own replies to the mattress comments stated that he, quote, had to keep moving, and rumors grew that he was dealing with a serious problem with a possible online stalker.
I could suggest
He
there's some
also
degree of
verified to
paranoia.
another commenter that he was in fact living out of his car at the time of this video, but that he still had good relations with his folks.
Has to keep moving.
Shortly after the speculation about Review Braw's stalker problem and the car mattress video, he issued comments publicly about the whole stalking
Difficulty with feelings of safety.
starting to get better. A couple of years later, he confirmed once again in a Reddit comment that things had gotten better and that the stalking incident was now in the past. Little
That
details
really affected him, it sounds like.
Aside from information gleaned from internet rumors and comments from those supposedly in the know. Whatever the truth may be, having such a creepy online stalker, or maybe even a large group of stalkers, is a very scary thing to experience, especially as a popular young YouTuber and genuinely good guy.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone.
On November 9th of 2019, Review Bra posted a video about a recent serious accident that he had experienced while walking around in the attic space above his garage. According to the story told by Review Bra himself, he misplaced his foot near a rafter in his garage attic, accidentally putting his full weight onto a sheet of drywall and falling through it trapdoor style onto the hard concrete below.
Yeesh.
I'm not joking around here. Take a look at this picture. It's a freaking trap door. Falling from an attic like this is every homeowner's worst nightmare. This was a serious fall that involved several injuries. He scraped his back against a few nails on the way down and took a very hard fall onto the concrete where he suffered a serious head injury. Not only did he injure his head, but the fall also resulted in him slamming his mouth shut and biting a lot of his tongue, which of course is not a good thing when you do food reviews for a living.
Oh dear.
Review Bra was clearly shaken up badly as he recalled this accident and didn't mince words about the seriousness of the situation. He even described the fall as potentially being fatal if he had just landed slightly different than he did. Luckily, it appears that he made a swift, full recovery and was back to his dead pursuits and deadpan food reviews in no time.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone.
The next tragic event was reported on January 16th, 2020.
Not quite
when
tragic,
Review
just
revealed that he
dangerous.
wasn't going to be reviewing food for a while because he was dealing with a very big problem involving his teeth, another vital piece of the human body required for reviewing food. Viewers had noticed for many years that Review Bra was chewing a bit oddly during his food reviews, and it turns out that he was dealing with some pretty painful tooth cavities, which was causing this problem. To make matters worse, Review Bra reported that he experienced a very bad dentist in 2016, who apparently ground off about 30% of his tooth for no good reason, and he was clearly shaken up about the ordeal. What began as a routine visit for cavity treatments quickly turned into a much worse situation, where half of his tooth had been removed or broken by the dentist. The video of Review Bra talking about his dental problems is almost hard to watch because it's clear that it was very, very bad, and it gave him a lot of anxiety even talking about it. He had several teeth treated by this dentist, and each one
This also fits into introvert sensation being an area that's valued for him, but also not an area of strength.
Dental work can be some of the worst experiences on earth, and even worse is when a bad dentist turns
Like,
a
it can
routine
totally throw him off.
to a nightmare. The only way this nightmare could possibly be any worse is when your career is literally dependent on your ability to use your teeth.
True.
Now, some of you may not think it's a very big tragedy to experience a bad visit to the dentist. However, when your entire career is based on reviewing food on video and an incompetent dentist permanently mutilates your teeth, I'd say that's a pretty tragic event. Unfortunately, this wasn't the end of Review Braw's
definitely
dental
arguable.
problems.
I think it speaks to introversion not being strong, but very valued for him.
2019, and was facing the extraction of up to 4 teeth, possibly needing to get dental implants as a result. Bear in mind that as a YouTuber, this kind of thing can hit you extra hard due to the lack of dental insurance.
One thing that you might notice right off the bat is that I'm talking a little funny.
On January 27th of 2020, it was revealed that Review Braw had oral surgery performed to remove some of his teeth. The good news is that the procedure went well, and that he has now gone on to fully resume his legendary food reviewing career. To this day, Review Braw continues to amaze us all with his blunt yet elegant food reviews that help guide our latest fast food product desires, and his ability to make a suit.
It's not quite the tragic life of it. It's a bit exaggerated, but you get the idea. I think introvert sensation as a mobilizing function makes a lot of sense. And I think extrovert intuition is there. There is certainly a quirkiness to him. It's just kind of understated. You know, trying out these different styles of dress. Trying to see a. Why is he crazy?
I like it. I actually know a few dragons personally. They're cool guys. I'm so done with them.
Interesting. Oh, okay. Let's look at this. Yeah, you wouldn't wear this if you weren't somehow intuitive, because it's very out there. No one dresses like this anymore. This is not a grounded thing to do.
No reasonable circumstance should it ever take that long to attain a sandwich from Wendy's. Should it ever?
But a collar like that went out of fashion in the early 20th century. 100 years ago. Over 100 years ago.
You know, you may say you're going too far with me, bro, but it's just the truth. These are just horrible. I mean, horrible.
He's not that angry. I mean, you can't see the. This is how angry he gets.
Something. It should taste like that thing. That goes for any product. This is the first review in a while.
Like, you do not wear this if you are remotely grounded as an individual. You wear this if you're dressing up as someone from the 19th century.
The harrowing experience. And I'm filled with, after this, I'm filled with shock.
It's interesting to wear a tweed jacket with that sort of tie.
What happened? I went to Sonic because I wanted to do a review tonight.
The tweed doesn't quite. I don't quite goes with the waistcoat and the tie. To be fair.
Your standard buffalo chicken sandwich, and then they have a garlic parmesan. I wanted the buffalo one. I'll go to Sonic. Okay. We're out of buffalo everything. And they have no buffalo sauce in. And that was the first thing that happened in my stroke of unfortunate luck.
He takes things quite personally. Cruel comments about his fingernails.
You are sick, twisted, demented, absolutely.
It's meant to reveal the answer why I keep them long.
that's the honest reaction and vote. And about, I would wager 73.7, maybe 8% of all human beings who have watched my content. That's based on a case study of about a dozen people, give or take a few. If you don't believe me, take a look at the reactions to what some people think of my fingernails. This is just what I saw in the last, I would even wager 15 minutes when I just went through the comments, because I knew they'd be there. But take a look at this. Damn, son. Them some long-ass fingernails.
Who
Cut
cares?
your damn nails. Now that one, I don't know what the last part was about, but I could understand at least the meaning of it. Cut your nails, bro. So creepy. Your fingernails, dude. Now that person was really committed into it because you could see by all the exclamation points, they meant what they were saying. I opened YouTube on my phone because I was watching this on a PlayStation. Good background info right there. Just to tell you to cut your fingernails. Now that is the ideal anti-fingernail comment right there. It gives you that background information so you get to know the person who is giving those remarks. It gives you that sense of dedication, commitment, and sincerity to the cause. This person said, tomato, tomato. This guy...
He's doing this for how many minutes?
I'll put soap, I'll brush them, I'll make sure that they're clean, I'll trim them when they get too long. You know? Why do I keep them so long? I mean, for what possible reason would you ever do such a grievous thing? And the honest answer has probably stemmed from even my childhood. Because I remember the first time I think I was ever asked about my fingernails that I could remember was about 11 years ago. And I've always had them long. But I remember someone asked me in school once if I wore fake nails. Yeah, that's pretty funny. But no, I said, no, it's the real deal. You know, they're legitimate, they're real. And that's just how I like them. And that's my honest answer. The reason why I keep my fingernails so long, and the reason why I always have done so, is simply because that's just how I like it. It's a means of personal preference. Now, if you'd like, if you play doctor, I'll even encourage it. You could go ahead and make up whatever diagnosis you'd like. But when I cut my fingernails really short, I absolutely detest the way the skin under the fingernails feels, having been exposed now to the open air, or say, touching this table top or touching anything. I always like there to be a boundary. To touch things with the fingernail so that the skin underneath the fingernails does not come in contact with anything.
Very introverted sensation.
That's honestly why I keep them that long. That's how I've kept them my entire life. That's how I enjoy.
Wish I had the discipline to let my nails grow long.
Clean them with.
Yep.
I'll put
Yep.
soap. I'll brush
Yep.
them. I'll make sure that they're
Yep.
clean.
I bet he does.
I
bet he does.
It's for that reason, because otherwise, have I not the fingernail there, and it's just really the skin or a really short fingernail, it feels uncomfortable to the point of me physically cringing, believe it or not.
Yep.
And
Introvert sensation.
Because
Exacting type.
Day-to-day activities.
Introvert sensation valuing.
Both physically and mentally. So I just let the fingernails grow out.
This guy has to be in there. Like, again, I'm not sure what else he could be. Maybe there's some other quotes from him. Know why they call these Lucky Charms, right? For my long pause and no answer. I can see that.
You know why they call these lucky charms, right?
What? Mine's just gone somewhere else. Yeah. And look, he is intuitive, but you can see he's so much in his immobilizing function. Right. Okay. I think it has to be LII. Right. That is everyone that people have asked me to type. I'll give things a couple more minutes and then we can stop for this week. So if anyone does want me to type anyone else, please make a super chat. It has to be at least $20, mentioning the name of the person you want me to type. If nothing comes through in the next couple of minutes, I will end the live stream. But I thank everyone in advance for this week and everyone making their super chats. Greatly appreciated. And good suggestions as well. Let me see this in the meantime.
What about the hot sauce? What about the singing crabs? This is a liquid that you consume. So I think it's defined as a drink. Pizza and slippers. People would sometimes inquire. They would ask, well, what would it look like after I released my mixtape? Now you know. And something occurred to me. I thought, well, I kind of want to talk about bagels. There's moments where I just am cursing Taco Bell nonstop for days on end. I don't know, back into me. We offered that little bit of I'm sorry. No sauce is going to fix this atrocity. It was this water texture that really is the most noticeable characteristic of this. There's a few times, especially lately, where I just wanted to take my head and just kind of dunk it in this cup of Baja Blast and, kind of walk around like that for a while. And good. He's good.
He's so much like the guy who plays Sheldon.
Here we are now, flipping the train. I'm making some memories I'm never gonna forget here at McDonald's. If you heard that, you're wondering what it was. It was just a loud car going by. Honestly,
Yeah. You don't wear black tie. You don't wear black tie when you are engaging. There is no good reason for this except a stylistic attempt. Black tie is for a semi-formal event. You can say you periodically wear a suit, and that's sort of smart professional wear. Black tie is not professional wear. That is evening leisure wear.
Fast flies by. Every wife just going by like that.
It is smarter than professional.
It's kind of sad to see, honestly.
And again, it's evening wear. Doesn't look like the evening.
Getting any better.
It's a very distinct bow tie, though. You can see it's not the classic shape. And look, knowing that, but again, he's gone for that collar, which is the slightly smarter version of black tie. Still with black tie.
So we could all see it. No, it's pickle juice.
He likes using very formal terms, very precise in his definitions. It's introverted logic coming in. Yeah, while drinking an energy drink. Exactly.
Immeasurable. My day is ruined.
Yep.
What's in it? Probably something that'll kill you, but that's the nature of Burger King, right? That's just how it is. The blue stuff over there has the ability to absorb particles and flavors and all of that.
I'm not gonna sit here being filmed for 5 hours. Prove it even works for that long.
Which is standard of Red Bull. I'm not gonna lie, I feel very defeated, more so than usual right now. Anything you'd like to add? What will the future hold? I wish I could tell you.
All right. Well, that's that. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you for all the super chats. Greatly appreciated. Have a lovely week, everyone. Bye-bye.